All right. Well, we don't want to keep anyone too long this evening, so thank you again for joining. We're excited to host this evening's webinar on maximizing savings, all about Duke Energy's battery control program. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, I do want to take a moment just to welcome anyone who's not super familiar with Cape Fear Solar yet, and speak a little bit about what you can expect from this webinar. In a moment here, we'll talk again, as I said there for a moment, a little bit more about Cape Fear Solar Systems. We'll also address who this webinar is for, or more specifically, who this battery control program is for, and how does energy storage work. So we'll touch on that as well for anyone who doesn't already have a battery with their solar or doesn't have solar at all. We'll also touch on what is Power Pair, which is the incentive program that Duke launched that EnergyWise is a component of. What does the process look like for anyone who has not gone solar and wants to understand what that process looks like, or for anyone who already has a battery and wants to understand what it looks like to go through enrollment, what they can expect to see those bill credits to look like as they come in on their bill. So we'll talk about all of those, as well as finish our time together with some Q&A. So feel free to submit questions as you go. We'll do our best at the end to address as many of them as we can. Any that we don't know the answer to, that's all right. We'll be sure to get the answer for you as well, and can reach out to you with those answers after the fact. All right. So yeah, Cape Fear Solar Systems is a residential and commercial PV installer. We also install battery storage and electric vehicle chargers. We've been located here in Wilmington since 2007, moved into this lovely facility here in downtown Wilmington, March of last year. In our 17 years of business, we've now done 4,500 plus installations. We've got over 60 employees, all working out of our Wilmington office. Of course, we're BBB accredited, and really we feel that our reviews speak for themselves. And lastly, we're community focused. And what that means is just that we take the stress out of working with your local jurisdictions, your local utilities. We take that off of your plate in exploring solar, because we work with those entities all day, every day. And we handle and make that process as smooth as we possibly can. As I mentioned there a moment ago, we really lie our expertise in solar panels, battery storage, and EV chargers, primarily for residences and businesses. We'll speak to a moment here exactly how that works as well. But first off, who's this for? This is certainly for anyone. I know there's many of you who are joining that you recently decided to go solar. You're incorporating battery storage as part of the Power Pair incentive program. And you're wondering what it looks like to go through the process of enrollment, what to expect in terms of seeing those bill credits. So we'll talk about that. For anyone who already has solar but is curious about what benefits they might see in adding a battery, we'll talk about the EnergyWise program specifically and how they can qualify for that program and in adding a battery to their system. And then lastly, for anyone that doesn't already have solar or storage, we'll speak to those homeowners who can evaluate whether Power Pair and EnergyWise would help be a good fit for their home, and you know, the practical financial analysis of going solar as well. So now we can speak briefly to how exactly energy storage works. So to take a half step back, as we know, when solar energy is produced by the panels on your roof, it's then turned into that AC power by an inverter. That AC electricity is able to be used directly by your home, first and foremost. Any excess energy is then set back to the grid, where you can build up credit. Now, what solar in and of itself does not accomplish is provide you with backup power in the event of an outage. And so where energy storage comes in is solving for that problem. So many of our customers are incorporating, really more and more of our customers are incorporating energy storage to ensure that they have power in the event of an outage, by being able to charge that battery up with the surplus they have during the day, and then use that battery at night in the event that an outage occurs. But there are, fringe benefits as well in insulating yourself from future utility rate changes, so that in the event that rates go up in the future or rate structures change, you can have control over how you're producing and consuming the energy that you make. And I just addressed some of these frequent reasons to add energy storage a moment ago, but really they are energy independence, to store and utilize the energy that you're producing freely instead of having to push it back to the grid and then use energy from Duke at night. Backup power, of course, is the biggest one and really critical for those of us that live here on the coast. You'd be able to power your home in the event of an outage without needing a generator. And in doing so, you're avoiding those recurring fuel costs. You don't have that yearly maintenance that comes with the generator. You don't have to bury a large propane tank. And then, of course, what we're here to talk about today, which is financial savings. You can take advantage of certain rate arbitrage, which is essentially where you're able to push energy back to the grid when it's most expensive to avoid incurring those high on-peak charges. It really just allows you to utilize the energy from your solar and battery system when it's most advantageous from you, and only perhaps pull energy from the grid when the rates might be the lowest. That's not the case for many of us yet here on Duke Energy, but that is certainly the way that they're transitioning. And so being able to have that battery on site and control that, whether it's beneficial to you now or in the future, is becoming more and more attractive. And then, of course, grid flexibility. So as I mentioned before, it protects you against any future changes in those rate structures, really gives you full autonomy and control over the energy you're producing and how you like to use it. Now, let's talk briefly about Duke Energy's Power Pair Incentive Program. Now, many of you I know are recent customers who are taking advantage of the Power Pair Incentive. But for those of you who are not aware, the Power Pair program was approved by Duke Energy and the North Carolina Utilities Commission as a program to incentivize homeowners to install brand new battery and solar systems. It means that homeowners can claim up to $9,000 in an initial incentive from Duke. There are two methods to participate in that program. The first is time of use. It's where you would be on a time of use rate structure, and the cost of energy that you would be billed for and get credited for depends on the time of day in which you consume it. So that's going to be between about 7 3/4 cents to about 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And homeowners on this option can determine that they'd like to participate in the EnergyWise battery control program after 2 years, but it's not inherent to that portion of the program. And I know many of our customers who are on that program would prefer not to participate in battery control, and that's okay. Being that they're on time of use, they would simply work with us to program the battery to navigate those rates on that time of use so that they're not going to be susceptible to the higher peak time and really are just going to see the financial benefits of producing and consuming their own electricity. The other option, of course, is net metering bridge. It's a transitional rate option from Duke's old legacy net metering program. The cost is a flat and consistent 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour before any additional riders that they might have. And participants in the net metering rider are required to participate in EnergyWise battery control, which we'll touch more on here in a moment. But both of these options are allowed to switch twice between either option after the initial 2 years and within that 10-year program. Both also have a $28 minimum bill before net excess is credited at 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour. And all that means is that any excess that you produce over and above what you consume, they're going to credit that back to you and actually decrease your monthly minimum bill. I've had a few customers over the last month or two, particularly towards the end of spring when the days were long and we weren't using quite as much HVAC, where we actually did see a couple negative bills. So that's going to be few and far between, not to be expected, but that was a change from the older net metering structure, and that you can expect to have those bill credits actually decrease your minimum bill charge. Now, what is EnergyWise? So we spoke a lot about the Power Pair Incentive Program there, but what we're really here to talk about today is the EnergyWise Battery Control Program. And so EnergyWise is linked primarily to the net metering bridge option of the power pair incentive. However, unlike power pair as a whole, it's accessible to anyone who has a battery. So you do not have to have installed a new battery system or a new solar system. You can get a battery added to an existing solar system and be eligible to participate in EnergyWise. What EnergyWise is what we in the industry would refer to as a virtual power plant program. And what that means is that it's designed to support the grid from critically high demand. And it does so by allowing Duke Energy to tap into the battery systems that are across the grid to discharge to the grid and avoid what could be a catastrophic demand. And so what I often reference to when talking about a program like this is, say, 2 years ago in December, many of us here on Duke received a notice to expect rolling brownouts. They were expecting a peak in increased demand, and they were concerned about their ability to meet that demand over what was a really cold snap that we were going through. And so for a period like that, they would like to be able to tap into stored energy across the grid to avoid the risk of the grid failing. And by allowing customers to participate in a program like this and asking for customers to participate in a program like this, they would plan to, Duke Energy that is, would plan to incentivize homeowners in the form of a monthly bill credit. So we'll talk more about the financials of that here on the next slide. And so what the program looks like is it's entirely optional. So if you're participating in power pair and you're on the net metering bridge rider, your plan is to participate in this program. If you do not have solar and you want to see if power pair and EnergyWise are a good fit for you, then you would have the option to determine if this is a good fit for you as well, or if you just want to participate in power pair and take advantage of that big rebate incentive. And third, if you have solar and you're interested in looking at adding a battery, then you can determine whether you'd like to participate in this program as well. You don't have to by adding a battery, but doing so would help provide some financial incentive. And what this program looks like in practice is Duke would be allowed to discharge your battery to as low as and no lower than 20% of its capacity. And they can do this between 30 to 36 times a year. So that's between 2 and nearly 3 times a month. Now, for each event, as they would refer to it, the homeowner is notified through their battery app. So with anyone who would have a Tesla Powerwall, for instance, based on their Tesla notification settings, they're going to receive a notice saying an event is about to occur tomorrow. This is what to expect. They're also then allowed to opt out to up to 4 of those events. So for customers who might be concerned, is Duke going to try to tap into my battery during the middle of hurricane season? Well, it's possible that they could do it during hurricane season. Fortunately, with those opt-outs, you can determine, are we at risk of having a storm coming in the next week or in the time period of this event? And is it worthwhile for me to use an opt-out? Otherwise, just by participating in this program, homeowners would earn between what is about $26 and $92 a month every month. And that's calculated by multiplying $6.50 times the continuous output of that battery. And if you have multiple, then you multiply them both together. And then you multiply that value by 0.709 for 70.9%. The maximum capacity that they'll credit for is 20 kW, which results in a $92.17 a month payment. Most of our customers are seeing a credit of about $53 a month as the Powerwall 3 product becomes more and more attractive. And you can see here, this is actually a chart from Duke's website showing what the bill credit would look like. So for the Powerwall 3, you're looking at $52 a month, and what amounts to $624 a year. Now, I point out this list here as well to note that there are a limited list of approved battery products from Duke. There also are a limited list of approved trade allies, and Cape Fear Solar, of course, is one of them, that you're eligible to claim the incentive from a program like this. Now that bill credit on this next slide, oh, actually it'll be the one after this, but first I want to speak to how to enroll for EnergyWise. If you're on Duke Energy Progress, which is anybody who's on the eastern side of the state here, so if you're in the Wilmington area, you're Duke Energy Progress. If we have anyone joined today who is on Duke Energy Carolinas, that might be the West Raleigh area, then you're going to be participating in a version of this program called Power Manager. All of the program details are the same, but you would actually enroll in the program through a different link. In a moment here at the end of our time, I'll include the link to enroll in our chat. Or if one of my colleagues, if you guys wouldn't mind pulling it up and sharing that, that would be great as well. And then you're going to follow the specific instructions for your manufacturer. So you're going to select the battery option that you have. So if you're at Tesla, you'll go to the Tesla page. I will encourage you to let you know that for both Tesla and Enphase, you will actually navigate directly to the monitoring app. Where if you're on Tesla, it's very clear and simple. The virtual power plant option will appear. You can click that and simply enroll by plugging in your account details, your name, your number, and opting into the terms and conditions. And then that's it. And if you're participating in Power Pair and there's some additional information that the utility is going to require, that's okay, because Cape Fear Solar takes care of the rest. Now, what will it look like on your bill? So these are actually examples directly from Duke Energy as well. This is just showing here the Power Manager program, which is the Duke Energy Carolinas version of the program. Here is the Duke Energy Progress version. So this is how it would appear on your bill as a billing credit. $33 is the example they have here, but most of our customers, again, with the Powerwall 3 product, you're looking at about $50 a month. If someone has an Enphase battery, it's going to depend on how many units they have for how much they would be eligible for as well. If you don't have an exact answer from our team, then we can certainly provide that calculation for you as well. And this is something that if you're evaluating solar and storage, it's important to consider, because if you're looking at adding a battery solution to your system and you're going to expect about $50 a month in additional savings for 12 months, and that's $600 a year for 10 years, you're ultimately expecting to see $6,000 in additional savings over that 10-year period. So combined with a potential Power Pair incentive, it's really quite significant in paying not only for the battery paying for itself, but also just making that entire solar investment a little bit more cost effective. So to summarize all of that, and just provide a quick summary, the current incentives for North Carolina residents really come down to a 30% federal tax credit. So that goes for a new solar and storage project. That goes for a battery addition to an existing solar project. And in terms of state incentives, the property taxes don't increase, despite what we've found and what studies have shown to be an increase in property value. So it's always good when you can make home improvements that add value to your home, but do not increase your property taxes. And the government's finding ways to increase that anyways. And then in terms of Duke Energy customers, as a review, if you're new solar and storage customers, you can get between the solar incentive and the battery incentive associated with Power Pair up to $9,000. And with the EnergyWise program, you can get as much as $92.17 a month. But what we're finding on average, about $600 a year, or $6,000 over the course of the 10-year program period. If you're an existing solar customer and you have a battery or considering adding a battery, then you can expect that EnergyWise credit as well if you decide to enroll. And so if you decide you have a battery, you'd like to enroll, I'd encourage you to go through your battery app to try to go through that enrollment process. If you need any assistance from our team, we're excited to guide you through it as well. And more importantly, if you've been on the fence about adding a battery and kind of unsure of what that looks like, or maybe the financials just haven't quite made sense for you, we'd encourage you to reconsider. Battery equipment pricing has come down maybe from where it has been in years past as the technology is advanced. But also what we're finding is, it's more powerful than it was before. And with an incentive program like this, you can just expect to see a little bit more savings than maybe in years past. And for those of you who already have a battery and this is a program you can take advantage of, that's huge as well. And you've really positioned yourself well for a world we're entering in where time of use rates are just going to become more and more the norm. So yeah, I think that's all we've got on the EnergyWise program. And so to briefly just touch on our process, if you're considering solar and have been unsure if it's a good fit, we encourage you to speak with one of our project consultants from our team who would then schedule a consultation with our project developers. Several of them are here today: Caleb, John, Matt, and Dar. And they would then evaluate with you what your energy needs are, what your roof structure and shading looks like, very similar to this design here, and really just collaborate on a custom design that best suits your needs and goals. And from there, we just want to help you determine if solar and storage is a good fit. And then finally, if you decide to move forward, then we handle the rest, and we want to do everything to make this process as smooth as possible. I think that's all I've got in terms of our presentation today. So I see we have a couple of questions that have rolled in. And let's see here. So yep, I see a question here regarding if there was end-phase support for the virtual power plant program. To confirm, yep, there certainly is. That was one of the approved products. So encourage you to enroll if you already have a battery, and if you don't, then feel free to reach out to our team as well. I see a question, please clarify the $28 minimum bill, and the reference to a negative bill seems to be in conflict. Yeah, that was certainly a complicated detail when they first rolled out the updates to this program. However, the way that the rider is written is that the $28 minimum bill is applied, but then any excess bill credits are then have the effect of decreasing that minimum bill. So that minimum bill is just to have the impact of if you produce more than you consume, okay, it nets out evenly. Excess is then credited at that decreased rate of about 3.4 cents and can have the effect of lowering the bill below the $28 and even applying a negative bill. That negative bill then would be rolled over to a future billing period, or as it's been explained to us, if you were to ever reach out to them and was rolling over indefinitely, you could actually receive a payment from Duke for that. And that's one of those things I'll sort of believe it when I see it. It sounds too good to be true, but that's what they've advised us on. All right, and so then I see for one Powerwall 3 unit in 100% charge during an outage, what is the expectation on duration of supply? For example, if we only run a stand-up freezer and a standard refrigerator and maybe occasional microwave use. This is a great question. In terms of how long you can expect a battery to last, I'd really encourage you to speak with one of our project developers more specifically about the proper sizing of the solar and storage for your home, especially given the loads that you hope to back up. However, if you're hoping to power just some of those simple loads, such as a freezer, fridge, or an occasional microwave, and you have any amount of solar charging that battery, you're going to be able to run those loads essentially indefinitely. You'd be able to do so for several days before even needing a good amount of solar to recharge and power those loads. That being said, we would anticipate you'd be able to power much more than that, assuming we've properly sized your solar to accommodate that as well. Question here from Anthony Register. After installation, what maintenance is required for the solar system and the battery? In terms of maintenance, there's really no moving parts in these equipments, right? We encourage you to actively monitor the system via your monitoring app, as we do as well. But the solar, really, it's just going to be a matter of having it cleaned maybe every couple years. I've actually got solar in my own home. I got out there this weekend and just gave them a light washing. That's really all they might need, thanks to some of the pollen we get down here every couple years. Other than that, there's no real maintenance needed for the battery, right? That's one of the distinguishing factors between it and a generator, which requires that routine maintenance. So definitely wouldn't expect recurring maintenance costs, other than if you like to pay a company to get them cleaned. And we've got some recommended partners for that service. All right, so question here, you handle that paperwork with Duke, and what is the lead time for installation? I appreciate the question there. Right now, if you were to meet with one of our team members, evaluate if solar is a good fit for you, and determine you want to take the next steps, we'd expect to see about 2.5 to maybe 3 months from the time the system, the time you sign up to the time the system's activated. Over that period, we're going to handle everything from permitting to meeting with getting engineering stamped, the system installed, finally inspections, and of course the interconnection with the utility, and guiding you through that power pair process to make sure you get your incentive. Appreciate that question. We're going to handle every step along the way to make sure it's as smooth as possible. All right, let's see. My PV array produced 16 megawatt hours last year, and I consumed 8 megawatt hours. I'm already at zero bill usage. My bill is $16 a month. It sounds like this program would not benefit me. My bill would go up to $28 a month. I would never receive a cash payment. Is that correct? So this is a good question, because it sounds like you are on the legacy net metering program. And under that program, they actually would not decrease your minimum bill charge. So similar to you, I have a $16 minimum bill. If I have excess usage, then I will simply lose it at the end of May every year, which isn't very fun, right? And so what I would encourage you to do is talk to a member of our team, have them look at just how much more you're producing than you're consuming, because with how much more it sounds like you're producing, that excess seems like it would outweigh what additional you might take on in the form of a monthly minimum bill just by switching to the new net metering bridge rider. That's something that I think would be worth evaluating. And if that's the case, you may see that you save more and at least get it to zero. It still remains to be seen for me if they're actually going to cut checks for people that go below zero. But just by switching to net metering bridge, you may see savings alone just in avoiding that $16 a month. But it sounds like you've got quite the large system with the usage you've got going on. A couple more questions here. Okay, question here from Jim. We appreciate the question, Jim. He said, thank you, Gabe and team. How long after signing up for PowerPair / EnergyWise does my battery become active in the program? That's a good question. Once you get enrolled, we've had customers, I think, in the very next billing period, start to get those credits. I believe, Matt, I think you can speak to this as well. You've already had a customer receive their check for the PowerPair program, so that's exciting. But yeah, it's really not taking long. Once the system's installed, you complete the enrollment in your app. If you're participating in PowerPair, send some additional information into Duke about the system you purchased, and then they've been confirming that within a matter of weeks, and then you can expect your credit to start appearing on the bill after that. So yeah, thanks for the question there. And then let's see, can you refresh our memory on one battery being able to run some HVAC during an outage, if sunny weather or cloudy weather? So this is a great question. Again, I do want to certainly defer to our project developers in your specific situation. Not every home is the same. It's going to be really beneficial to make sure that we're designing solar and storage for the loads that you want to back up and for your usage. One of the things that's unique about the new Powerwall 3 product from Tesla is that it does have the surge and power output, as well as products like the LG Home 8, for example, to be able to potentially start some of your heavier loads like the HVAC unit. Whether or not it can run that load for an extended period is certainly going to depend on how much solar is being produced and what your usage as a whole looks like. But our recommendation is typically going to be not to intend on running that load for very long. One battery is really best suited for your lighter loads, such as your lights, fans, fridge, freezer, basic electronics. And if you're someone who monitors your use, then you may be able to run your heavier loads longer. And again, the sizing of the system is ultimately going to determine what works best for you. Thanks for the question. So I'm happy to connect, Keith, regarding your question about the minimum bill going from 16 to 28. In simple terms, the only way that I think it could go down is because on the new program, though your minimum bill would go to $28 a month, all that excess you're producing would lower it then from there. On your current program, it's never going to go below $16. On the new program, if you're overproducing, it will decrease your $28. So it could actually decrease it all the way down to zero. That just has to do with the agreement that they had with the North Carolina Utilities Commission in the new rider, changing how you get credited for those excess credits. Before they wiped it out, now they have to pay it out just at a decreased rate. Hopefully that helps. All right. Well, thanks, y'all. I think that's all the questions we've got for today. I'd love to just pass along to one of our project developers, maybe to speak briefly on any of the experiences or conversations they've had with folks who've been adding storage. I know a couple of you have had a lot of folks reaching out recently in considering adding storage to an existing system.
I mean, there's just a lot of excitement around battery storage this summer, for the first time, it being a financial tool, closing the gap on battery storage for a lot of people. So whether it's an addition or looking at it initially, it's a great time.
Gabe, I'm sorry I can't seem to get my video to work, but
That's okay.
Something that I've found really exciting about helping people to navigate this program is that, for a lot of people who may have been looking at solar for a while and they could never really get the numbers to make sense, perhaps because their usage is low or because their roof surfaces weren't ideal, the way that these incentives are structured, especially with the flat payment from EnergyWise, has really helped us to get to a payback period or a return on investment, even in those situations which maybe we traditionally wouldn't have considered ideal for a solar project. And that's been really exciting to see how that would apply.
I appreciate that, Dar. Appreciate you sharing that. It really has changed how we evaluate storage. And I think for anyone who has been considering storage for some time or looked at it in the past and wasn't sure if it was a good fit, you probably did so knowing that you weren't really going to save much money, if anything, by having storage. It was just there for peace of mind in the event of an outage. So to know that now you can evaluate storage as not only a backup solution, but that it's going to ultimately pay for itself through some of these incentives, I think that's just a lot of peace of mind for people to feel that much more confident about using it as a solution compared to maybe a generator where they have to keep refueling. Well, cool, y'all. I think that's what we've got for today. Again, I just want to thank everyone for joining. If you have any questions that weren't answered here today, or want to evaluate solar more specifically, you can feel free to send me an email at gabe@capefearsolarsystems.com. I'll send that in the chat here in a moment. And also, I would encourage y'all to participate in our webinars in the future. If you have any topics you'd like for us to cover, questions you have that haven't been answered, feel free to send them in. You can, again, email those to me as well. We'd love to cover it again. For anyone who didn't get all of the session today or is curious about hearing more about it again tomorrow or wants to share it with anyone, we have another webinar tomorrow at 12 o'clock. You can feel free to register for that through our social media, as well as the invitation that was sent to your email prior. So thanks again. You all have a great rest of your evening, and I look forward to talking again in the future. Send your regards.